With the start of the Galarian Expedition event in Pokémon GO, you now have a chance to encounter a shiny Galarian bird from your Daily Adventure Incense. This isn't actually event specific though, it's actually a permanent change moving forward for the Daily Adventure Incense. There is one major downside though. The Galarian birds by themselves are actually some of the rarest Pokémon to encounter in the game, and on top of that, their catch rate is extremely low, coming in at 0.3%. Not to mention, they also have a flee rate of 90%, making it almost impossible to catch them without a Master Ball. So basically, to start things off in this video, I want to go over some frequently asked questions regarding these new shiny Galarian birds, and I'm going to start by confirming that they cannot run away. They're probably going to break out of your Pokeball numerous times, possibly even over 50, but as long as you don't back out of the encounter, you're going to eventually catch these with enough tenacity. So when it comes down to it, this means that you should not use your Master Ball if you do happen to encounter the shiny, unless you want it for purely cosmetic reasons or you just happen to run out of Pokeballs. So like most shiny legendary Pokemon, the Galarian birds also have a 1 out of 20 chance to be a shiny, which means you basically have a 5% chance of getting the shiny if you are able to even encounter one. Now if you do actually happen to encounter a Galarian bird, whether or not that's actually going to be shiny, I also want to go over increased catching odds, and there's actually quite a few ways to increase your chances of catching it sooner rather than later. First of all, let's go over berries and their catch rate bonus. So for regular raspberries, it's going to give you a 1.5 times catch rate. For silver pineapple berries, it's going to give you a 1.8 times catch rate. And then for golden raspberries, it's going to give you a 2.5 times catch rate. Now when it comes down to the Pokeball that you're going to be using, a regular Pokeball gives you a standard base catch rate, a Great Ball gives you a 1.5 times catch rate, and an Ultra Ball gives you a 2 times catch rate. Next up, let's take a look at throws. So for a curveball throw, you actually get a 1.7 times catch rate, which is a pretty big multiplier. So for those of you that actually do straight hand throws, you probably want to avoid doing that. Curveball is definitely going to be the way to go. Now for actually landing a nice throw, you have between a 1.1 and a 1.3 times catch rate. For a great throw, you have between a 1.3 and a 1.7 times catch rate. And then finally, for an excellent throw, you have between a 1.7 and 1.9 times catch rate. Now the reason that the catch rate actually varies on nice, great, and excellent throws is because the circle size is what determines it. Basically, the smaller the circle, the better catch rate you're going to get. What's even crazier is that I actually never even knew about this until I researched it for this video. I always assumed it was like a set rate, but it's actually a variable rate. Taking a look at our final catch bonus, we're going to have the catch type metals. So for a bronze medal, you're going to get a 1.1 times catch rate. For silver, it's going to be 1.2. For gold, it's going to be 1.3, and then finally for platinum, it's going to be 1.4. Now if a Pokemon actually has 2 typings like the Galarian birds do, then the average of both will actually be combined. Following that, I want to talk about Pokemon levels during their wild encounters. So basically, depending on the level of a Pokemon, they're going to be easier or more difficult to catch. For example, if you actually encounter a Galarian bird that is level 1, you do have the best chance of actually catching it purely based on the Pokemon level. That being said though, if you encounter one that is weather boosted at level 35, which is the max level you can actually encounter in the wild, this is going to be the most difficult version of it to catch. So basically when it comes down to all these catch rate multipliers, the best possible catch rate is going to be using an Ultra Ball for a 2 times catch rate, combined with a Golden Raspberry for a 2.5 times catch rate. You throw a curveball and you also land the smallest possible excellent throw, giving you a 1.9 times catch rate respectively. You have platinum medals for both typings, giving you a 1.4 times catch rate. And the Pokemon is going to be level 1 or level 5 weather boosted. Now speaking of the weather boost, one more really important thing you want to consider when you're going out to use your Daily Adventure Incense and combining it even with the extension for More of Time is to make sure that the weather is going to be windy, because all the Galarian birds are going to be dual flying type Pokemon, which means you do have an increased chance of actually encountering one thanks to the weather boost. Keep in mind this also means you're more likely to encounter one that is going to be a higher level, which means it's going to be more difficult to catch, but I do think the increased chance to encounter one is well worth it, because after all, if it does end up being a shiny, it can't run away. Next up, let's talk about the guaranteed critical catch trick. So earlier this year, Niantic actually added this feature in game. So basically what happens is that if you actually land the smallest possible excellent throw on a Pokemon, it's going to give you a guaranteed critical catch, which means just 100% catch rate. So basically it's a skill-based mechanic that was a great addition to the game, but sadly this will not work on legendary Pokemon, which of course does include the Galarian birds. Now I do also want to clarify that this doesn't mean that you can't get a critical catch on the Galarian birds, you just can't use the guaranteed critical catch trick. There's always going to be a 1% chance that the Pokemon will critical catch. Next up, I want to talk about 2 things to avoid doing while you're actually hunting these shiny Galarian birds. The first one is going to be to not use an auto catcher while you actually have the Daily Adventure Incense active. I know many players that actually use auto catchers, but this is one time where you definitely don't want to use them, specifically when it comes down to Incense Pokemon. And the reason for this is because the auto catcher actually picks them up quicker than normal Pokemon. So let's say for example that your auto catcher did actually catch the Pokemon. Well, the Incense Pokemon will still appear on the map, but if you try to catch it, the Pokemon will automatically run away after one shake. Now another way to actually check this is that if you actually try to bury the Pokemon, it'll give you an error message. So basically the reason that this happens is because the auto catcher only attempts to catch the Pokemon once, and for most auto catchers they only use standard Pokeballs. So if you actually happen to encounter a Galarian Bird and you do have your auto catcher on, even if it is shiny, it'll most likely run away. And if you're brave enough to actually check your journal, it'll also show you in there if it was shiny, which again can be devastating for some players. Now the second thing that I want you guys to avoid is to not use AR when you're actually catching these Galarian Birds. This is mostly applied towards anyone who posts their encounters on social media, especially if they do encounter a shiny. Basically, if you toggle AR on and off, you can get a really clean clip of the shiny encounter with the sparkles. This is honestly great for content creators like myself, or if you want to get a quick screenshot for your personal social media account. But for these Galarian Birds, I would not risk doing this because they are incense spawns, which means that they're going to despawn incredibly quick off the map. So if your game happens to glitch out, you're going to end up losing that shiny Galarian Bird, and that would be awful. I do actually want to give you guys an example that I went through over Pokemon GO Fest, which is kind of a tragic encounter. So basically I encountered a shiny crab brawler on a route, and this was like one of the new shinies in the game too during GO Fest. So of course I went to get the shiny clip, right, for my footage, and you know, when I toggled AR on and off, AR ended up glitching out. And so basically when I restarted the game and I went to reload it, since route spawns are very similar to incense spawns, it was gone. And I was devastated, guys, but thankfully I was able to get a shiny redemption later. Now for the shiny Galarian Birds, this is probably not going to happen. You can literally get a million screenshots of your shiny Galarian Birds, you can put them in AR afterwards, but do not risk the initial encounter. It is not worth it for the clip. Now we talked about catch rates earlier, but I also want to go over the circle lock method for consistent excellent throws and possibly just even consistent great throws. You essentially want to hold down the Pokeball to set the circle, then wait for the attack animation to start, and you pretty much time your throw so that it lands right as that attack animation finishes. Now while I personally do freehand most of my excellent throws because I find that to be a little bit easier as you get more experience, if I actually need to lock in and focus on getting consistent excellent throws on like a legendary Pokemon from raid battles, I always use the circle lock method. Now I actually think one of the most important tips in this video is how to get more spawns from your Daily Adventure Incense. So first of all, the Daily Adventure Incense is free to use and is going to last 15 minutes. You get one to use every single day in game. Now you can also extend the duration or essentially pause the timer by using the adventure effect from Dialga Origin form, which is called Roar of Time. This was an exclusive moveset only available during the Sinnoh Tour event, and it cannot be Elite TM'd. So if you don't actually have a Dialga Origin form with Roar of Time, you're gonna have to get it from a trade. I do actually have some good news regarding this though, because this Pokemon is actually gonna be making its return during raids in the Wild Area event in November, so that's only like a month away. But enough about accessibility. So basically this adventure effect pauses the timer on your Incense, Star Piece, and your Lucky Eggs in 6-minute increments at the cost of 5 Dialga Candy and 5,000 Stardust. So for an extension of 1 hour, this would cost you 60,000 Stardust and 60 Dialga Candy. So for those of you out there who have a ton of excess rare candy, this could be a good investment for the future, especially if you already give rare candy to basically every single meta-relevant legendary Pokemon. Now regardless of using Roar of Time, you can actually get 2 spawns every single minute while using your Daily Adventure Incense, and this also works for regular Incense as well. But the key here is that you want to be walking in a straight line at brisk pace, and if done correctly, you should get a new spawn about every 30 seconds. So for the normal duration of a Daily Adventure Incense, this means that you can get 30 potential chances for an encounter with a Galarian Bird. If you decide to actually extend the duration with Roar of Time, you can get up to 120 spawns per hour if done correctly. Now finally, since the chance to encounter a shiny Galarian Bird is going to be in Pokemon GO indefinitely moving forward, I also would recommend using Roar of Time only during specific events that feature a lot of meta-relevant Pokemon. Basically, if the spawns are better, you're going to enjoy the process a lot more, but if the spawns are trash, I mean, it's going to be so miserable going through all of them. Like, during this event, we actually had Beldum spawns, which is actually really nice to encounter. So once again, this only applies to Roar of Time if you actually want to extend it. Like, make sure that the events are good, and then you can actually get some good spawns at the same time while you're grinding it out for the Galarian Bird. There is actually one more thing I wanted to go over before we end off this video, and it's purely anecdotal, but many players who have actually encountered Galarian Birds say that they've actually encountered them in the same spots while actually using their Daily Adventure Incense. YouTubers like The Cruise Ship and Alex Nexton have both made multiple videos covering this, and while I can't actually confirm this to be accurate, I do think that the implication behind it does speak some truth. And so if you have actually encountered a Galarian Bird before, it might be worth running your Daily Adventure Incense in the same place and kind of going for a walk in that similar area. So for those of you guys out there who have actually encountered Galarian Birds in the same location multiple times, I would encourage you to actually share your personal experiences in the comment section down below. I'm sure that your encounter stories could help motivate some players out there who are on the grind for these extremely rare shinies. But with that being said, that's basically everything that I have for you guys in this video. If you do want to check out some more content, I'm going to recommend these 2 videos right here. But before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all real soon in the next one.